The twin suns rose over the silver towers of Vyran Academy, painting the alien city in gold and violet light. Inside the grand lecture hall, hundreds of alien students took their seats. The air shimmered with holograms and floating tablets. It was the first day of galactic history, the age of Deathworlders, a subject every student feared but loved. Professor Xylan Mar, tall and strict, walked slowly to the center platform. His long dark coat glowed with faint blue circuits. The moment he raised his clawed hand, silence filled the hall. "Class," he began, his deep voice echoing. "Today you learn about the most feared creatures that ever lived, the Deathworlders." A murmur spread through the class. Some students straightened nervously. Others looked thrilled. The professor smiled, the kind of smile that hides both pride and warning. They came from violent worlds, burning skies, toxic air, storms that could tear a body apart, he said. But none were more dangerous than the ones from a small blue planet. They called it, he paused, Terra. The name made a strange echo. The hall lights flickered faintly. The professor didn't notice. Terra, he continued, was a death world. Gravity too strong, weather too cruel, beasts too wild. Yet its inhabitants survived. They were called humans. He turned toward the class and spread his hands. Creatures of emotion, rage, hope, fear, love. Unpredictable, illogical, dangerous. Holograms appeared around him, showing explosions, burning cities, humans in armor fighting under a red sky. The students gasped. Some flinched when a holographic human soldier shouted a battle cry before disappearing into dust. They destroyed themselves, Xylan said coldly, fighting wars they could never win. And when the fire ended, there was nothing left. He pressed another button. The hologram zoomed out, showing a planet breaking apart, the blue world turning black. They are gone, he said. And we, the Zanari, have evolved beyond them. We are the galaxy's only Deathworlders now. Stronger, smarter, disciplined. The room filled with light applause. At the very back of the hall, a quiet student sat motionless. Her name was Lyra Venn, 17 standard years old, small and graceful, with pale skin that shimmered faintly like moonlight. She wore the same academy uniform as the others, but something about her seemed different. Her eyes, gray, not golden like the rest, watched the burning planet hologram with pain. She didn't clap. She couldn't. Inside her, a memory stirred. An old lullaby her grandmother used to hum. Blue skies above, strong hearts below, and a world called Earth will always glow. Her grandmother had always whispered that word like it was sacred. Earth. Now, as the professor spoke with such confidence, Lyra's chest tightened. Professor! One student raised his hand, a tall alien with crystal horns. If humans were so powerful, how did they die? Xylan smiled, pleased by the question. They couldn't control themselves. Their minds were brilliant, but their hearts were wild. They turned their fire against one another until even the stars turned away. He walked slowly around the stage, his boots clicking. The lesson, my students, is simple. Emotion is weakness. The students nodded in agreement, all except Lyra. She looked down at her gloved hands. Beneath the thin black fabric, her palms were sweating. A tiny silver pendant hung around her neck, an old charm shaped like a spiral. Her grandmother said it was human. Lyra swallowed hard. Her heart whispered words her mouth was afraid to speak. They weren't weak, she thought. They cared too much. The hologram changed again, showing a human child reaching out for help, then turning into dust. The students murmured with disgust or pity. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Professor, a nervous student asked, what if some humans survived? Laughter filled the hall. The professor smirked. Impossible. Every search probe, every record, every trace gone. Humanity is extinct. At that moment, the hologram flickered. Just for a heartbeat, the burning planet turned into something else. Blue oceans, green forests, clouds shining like silver. Lyra gasped softly. Earth? She whispered, almost without realizing. The word hung in the air like a forbidden melody. Professor Xylan stopped. Who said that? His voice dropped to a growl. All heads turned. Lyra froze. Her heart hammered like thunder. The professor's eyes locked on her. Did you speak, Lyra? She hesitated, then stood slowly. Yes, sir. He crossed his arms. You have something to say? The room was utterly silent. Dozens of eyes glowed in the dim light, watching her like prey. Lyra's voice trembled, but she didn't sit down. You said the humans are gone, she said softly. But have you ever heard the name Earth? The silence deepened. For the first time, even the floating lights above seemed to pause. The professor blinked once, twice. What did you say? She swallowed. My grandmother. She told me stories. About a blue planet. About people who laughed and cried and built the stars with their hands. Gasps spread through the room. Some students whispered, "Blasphemy!" Others laughed nervously. Professor Xylan's voice turned icy. Those stories are forbidden. That name has been erased from all archives for a reason. Then why does the system still remember it? Lyra asked quietly, pointing at the hologram that had just flickered. Why did it show me blue oceans when you said it was all ash? His face darkened. Sit down. Now. Lyra didn't move. Her small voice carried through the entire hall. Maybe humans aren't extinct. Maybe you're just afraid they're not. The entire class gasped. Enough! Xylan thundered, his voice shaking the walls. You dare insult the history of this galaxy? Lyra looked at him one last time, calm despite her fear. History can lie, Professor. But truth, it always finds a way. And as she turned toward the door, the giant screen behind the professor glitched again. For just 1 second, showing a faint human face, smiling. The word Earth appeared in bright white letters before vanishing. No one spoke. The professor stood frozen. The students stared. And Lyra walked out quietly, her heart racing, her grandmother's song echoing in her head. Blue skies above, strong hearts below. Outside, under the twin suns, Lyra whispered to the wind. If they ever lived, I'll find them. Somewhere, light years away, a forgotten satellite beeped once. A lonely sound lost among the stars. The academy halls were quiet when Lyra walked out, her steps echoing softly against the crystal floors. The twin suns outside had already dipped lower, painting the corridors in amber light. She could still hear the laughter from the classroom behind her. Laughter that stung more than any wound. Earth? They whispered, mocking. She said Earth. Lyra kept walking, her heart pounding. Her hands shook as she touched the small spiral pendant on her neck. Her grandmother's voice whispered in her memory. If no one remembers our name, then we truly die. But if one heart still speaks it, we live forever. She reached the wide balcony overlooking the city of Vyran Prime. A place of shining towers, floating cars, and silver lights that never dimmed. The air smelled of metal and ozone. From up here, the world looked perfect. But to her, it felt cold. Lyra leaned on the rail, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, she thought, was the planet her grandmother spoke about, blue, alive, human. She didn't notice the tiny drone floating behind her shoulder. Its red light blinked silently. Every word she spoke in class, every movement, was already being transmitted to the Council of Knowledge. Inside the central observatory, Professor Xylan stood before a large glowing screen. The faces of 3 alien elders appeared as holograms above him, their expressions hard and cold. Professor, one said, voice sharp, you allowed a student to speak the forbidden name. I silenced her, Xylan replied quickly. She's only a child repeating bedtime myths. Children don't remember myths that were erased before they were born, another elder said. She must have seen something, or someone taught her. Xylan frowned. Her file says she's from the orphan colonies beyond the rim. Her records are incomplete. Incomplete, the elder repeated darkly. Perhaps tampered. The screen flickered. Bring her in for verification, the council ordered. We'll see what her blood remembers. Xylan's jaw tightened. He bowed slowly. Understood. Lyra stayed on the balcony until the last light faded. She turned when she heard footsteps. Professor Xylan stood there, hands behind his back. "Professor," she said quietly. He looked at her for a long moment. No anger now, only curiosity. "You said the word Earth," he said. "Where did you hear it?" Lyra hesitated. "From my grandmother. She used to tell me about oceans, blue skies, and a world where people cared for each other. I thought it was just a story. But when your hologram changed, I saw it. I saw the same blue she described." Xylan stepped closer. "You saw an error in a 1,000-year-old image. Nothing more." "No," Lyra whispered. "It wasn't an error. It was alive." The professor sighed. "You don't understand, Lyra. The council forbids that name for a reason. Entire civilizations fell chasing the myth of Earth. The last who searched for it never returned." Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining. "Maybe they didn't die. Maybe they found it." Xylan frowned, unsettled by her calm defiance. "You are young," he said softly, "and curiosity can be dangerous. Forget the word, and you might still have a future here." She shook her head. "I can't forget something that feels like home." For the first time, Xylan had no answer. He stared at her. This small, strange girl with eyes that looked almost human. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She lay in her dorm bed, staring at the holographic ceiling showing fake stars. Her roommate snored softly on the other side. Lyra turned away, clutching her pendant. "What if Grandma was right?" she whispered. "What if humans aren't gone?" She got up quietly and slipped out of her room. The hallways were empty, only dim blue lights guiding her steps. She made her way to the restricted archive room, where the Academy kept old data fragments. A small scanner hovered beside the door. Lyra placed her hand on it. It flashed red, access denied. She bit her lip. "Come on." She remembered something her grandmother once said. "Machines recognize truth, not permission." Lyra took off one glove and pressed her bare palm to the scanner. The device buzzed, then flickered. The red light turned green. The door slid open. She froze. That shouldn't have worked. Inside, rows of glowing memory cubes lined the shelves. The air was cold, humming with old data. Lyra walked between the aisles until one cube blinked faintly. Dusty, forgotten, but alive. Its label was half broken. Only 2 letters were visible. EA. She touched it. The cube projected a flickering hologram. An image of blue oceans, mountains, and a human city filled with laughter. Voices spoke in an old language she didn't understand, but one word repeated clearly. Earth. Lyra covered her mouth. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "It's real," she whispered. "It's all real." But before she could copy the data, a metallic voice boomed behind her. "Unauthorized access detected. Stay where you are." Lyra spun around. 2 security drones hovered at the doorway, lights flashing red. Her heart raced. She grabbed the cube and ran. Alarms blared through the hallways. Lights flashed. "Stop immediately," the drones shouted. Lyra darted into a dark corridor, clutching the cube to her chest. She could feel the data pulsing faintly in her hands, as if it had a heartbeat. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't let them take it. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just a quiet student. She was someone who carried a forgotten truth. And far away, deep in the void of space, an old satellite received a faint signal from the cube in her hand. Its screen lit up for the first time in centuries. Signal recognized. Origin, Earth. Lyra looked out a window as she ran, and the stars seemed to pulse brighter, as if something ancient had just awakened. The next morning, the Academy was buzzing like a nest of hornets. Everywhere Lyra went, whispers followed her. "That's her," someone muttered. "She said the forbidden name. They say she's not even Zanari." Lyra kept her head down and walked faster. The cube she had stolen last night was hidden inside her bag, its faint pulse still beating like a second heart. She hadn't dared open it again, not with security cameras everywhere. As she turned into the main hall, A voice echoed from behind. Lyra Venn. Stop. It was Professor Xylan. His tone was colder now, sharper. 2 Academy guards stood behind him, both in dark armor. Lyra froze. You're coming with us, he said. She tried to speak. Professor, Now, he interrupted. The students nearby pretended not to look, but everyone watched. The professor's eyes were unreadable. Lyra followed silently, her hands trembling. They led her through the lower corridors of the academy, places no student was ever allowed. The walls were lined with humming machines, their lights casting long shadows. Finally, they reached a heavy door marked Genetic Analysis Wing. Inside, bright white light burned her eyes. A medical table stood in the center, surrounded by floating scanners and silver instruments. Xylan gestured. Sit. Lyra hesitated. What is this place? A verification chamber, he said. The council wants to confirm who you are, and what you are. Her stomach tightened. What I am? He didn't answer. A female medic stepped forward. Her skin a pale blue, her hands steady. She held a small silver device. Just a blood sample, she said. It will take a moment. Lyra's throat went dry. She looked at Xylan, but he avoided her eyes. Slowly, she extended her hand. The device touched her skin. A quick sting, then a faint beep. A drop of her blood shimmered inside a glass vial. The medic placed it into the scanner. The machine hummed. Lights flickered. Data began to scroll across the screen. Xylan crossed his arms. Run the comparison against all known species. The medic nodded. Processing. Seconds passed. Then the screen glitched. The lights dimmed for a heartbeat. The medic frowned. That's strange. Xylan stepped closer. What is it? She tried to steady her voice. The DNA doesn't match any known galactic database. No record in the Zenari archives. No match among council-approved species. Lyra's pulse quickened. What does that mean? The medic typed again, expanding the search range. Wait. There's something. A fragment match ancient code. It's coming from an offline record. Xylan's eyes narrowed. Pull it up. The scanner's light shifted from blue to red. A word appeared on the screen in Old Terran script. Origin, Earth. The room fell silent. The hum of machines seemed to fade. Lyra's breath caught. Earth. The medic stepped back, whispering, Impossible. That database was deleted centuries ago. Xylan stared at the glowing word. Frozen. His mind raced, part disbelief, part fear. Lyra stood slowly, voice trembling but clear. You said humanity was gone, but your own system just remembered us. Stop talking, Xylan snapped, though his voice shook. She looked at him, eyes shining with tears and fire. You lied to everyone. Enough, he barked. Guards, restrain her. The 2 armored guards stepped forward. Lyra backed away. I didn't do anything wrong. The council will decide that, Xylan said, though doubt clouded his tone. The medic hesitated. Professor, maybe? Now. The guards reached for her, but the scanner suddenly exploded in sparks. The machines around them flashed red, alarms blaring. A robotic voice shouted. Data breach detected. Protocol restarting. Signal sent to external source. Xylan's eyes widened. What signal? Where? No one answered. The lights flickered wildly. Lyra's pendant began to glow, reacting to the same signal pulsing from the scanner. She gasped, clutching it. What's happening to me? The medic shouted. Her blood. It's activating the beacon. The floor trembled as another alarm roared. The holographic display turned into a symbol, a blue spiral with a bright center. Xylan stared at it, his face pale. I've seen that symbol before. In the ancient ruins beyond the outer rim. It was called the Mark of Humanity. Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. It's the same mark on my wrist. Everyone froze. She pulled off her glove, revealing the small spiral scar glowing faintly like light beneath her skin. The machines responded instantly, a soft hum rising in harmony with her heartbeat. Shut it down, Xylan yelled. Now! But it was too late. A final pulse of energy burst from the scanner, sending everyone staggering back. When the light faded, the word Earth pulsed one last time on the display, then disappeared. Silence filled the room. Smoke curled from the broken machine. Lyra stood trembling, her hair loose, her eyes wide. The pendant still glowed against her chest. Xylan stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. You carry their code," he said quietly. "You're one of them." Lyra took a step back. "I didn't know. I just wanted to know the truth." He exhaled shakily. "The council will come for you now. They'll want to erase this. And you." Tears welled in her eyes. "Then I'll run. I'll find where the signal went." He looked at her, torn between fear and pity. "You can't escape them." Lyra glanced at the shattered scanner. "Maybe not, but someone out there just heard me." And as she turned to flee, far beyond the academy, in the deep silence of space, a forgotten satellite blinked awake. Its old human systems translated the alien signal and sent out one simple message into the void. Status confirmed. Human survivor detected. The moment Lyra stepped out of the laboratory, the alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed across the academy walls, painting everything in panic and danger. Alert! Containment breach in Sector 9. Subject classified. Human. The robotic voice echoed through every hallway. Lyra's heart pounded. The word human felt like fire in the air. Students gasped, rushing away from her path. Doors sealed automatically. Metal shutters fell from the ceilings. She ran. Her shoes slapped against the crystal floor as she darted through the long corridors. Guards shouted behind her, their footsteps thundering like a storm. "Stop the girl!" someone yelled. "She's a contamination risk." Lyra's breathing came fast, every inhale sharp. She clutched the glowing pendant under her shirt. The cube in her bag vibrated faintly, as if alive. She turned sharply into the old archive wing, a dusty corridor few ever visited. The walls were cracked, lights flickering weakly. Here ancient knowledge slept, sealed and forgotten. Inside the command center, Professor Xylan watched the chase through the holographic screens. His face was pale. He could hear the council's voices crackling through his earpiece. "Capture the subject alive. Do not let her reach the communication core. If she escapes, the entire galaxy will know the truth." He clenched his jaw. "Understood," he said, though his heart wasn't in it. He remembered the look in Lyra's eyes. Not madness, not rebellion, just belief. Lyra stumbled into the dusty archives. Shelves rose high like walls, filled with glowing data cubes. She pressed her back to one, listening. The sound of boots and drones was getting closer. She whispered to herself, "Think, Lyra, think." Her eyes darted across the room. Old consoles, ancient terminals covered in dust. One still blinked faintly. She rushed to it and powered it up. The screen flickered to life, showing faded text. Terra historical records. Level 5 access required. Lyra bit her lip. "Come on. Please work." She placed her glowing pendant against the scanner port. The machine whirred. For a second, nothing happened. Then the screen brightened. "Access granted." Her heart leapt. The holographic display lit the entire room, showing images of humans smiling, building cities, flying ships through the stars. Their faces looked alive, fearless, kind. Lyra touched the image of a young woman holding a child. "So this is what we were," she whispered. But behind her, the door burst open. Drones floated in, weapons humming. "There she is." Lyra ducked as an energy blast scorched the wall beside her. She grabbed the data cube from her bag and slammed it into the terminal. The systems synced instantly. A bright pulse of light flashed, sending data racing across hidden wires deep within the Academy's network. Transmitting signal. "Stop her!" a guard shouted. Lyra jumped behind a shelf, barely missing another blast. The room shook as drones fired again. Data cubes fell like rain. She ran deeper into the archives, weaving between shadows. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't stop. In the control room, Professor Xylan stared as one of the screens went white. "Professor!" a technician shouted. "She's in the archives. The system's transmitting something." "To where?" Xylan demanded. "We can't trace it. The signal's using pre-council frequencies, ancient ones." Xylan's mind raced. "Pre-council, Earth technology. Shut it down," he ordered. "Sir, we can't. She's already inside the core path." Xylan slammed his fist on the table. "Then reroute it." But even as he spoke, the main holomap showed a signal shooting from the Academy into orbit, a message leaving the planet. Lyra reached the far end of the archives. The door there was locked, rusted with age. She slammed her hand on the control pad, but it didn't open. Behind her, the guards were getting closer. She could hear their voices, cold and certain. "Don't move." Lyra looked around desperately. Then she saw it. A vent shaft above her, half open. She climbed onto a shelf, grabbed the edge, and pulled herself in just as a blast scorched the floor where she stood. The shaft was narrow, dark, full of dust. Her fingers bled as she crawled. Come on," she whispered. Behind her, the sound of drones echoed, searching. Finally, the vent opened into another chamber, the Library of Forbidden Species. Lyra dropped down quietly. The air was colder here, the lights dim and blue. Inside glass tanks floated holographic models of extinct species, strange creatures long gone. At the center, a giant glass display flickered with a label. Homo sapiens, classified, Deathworld origin. Lyra froze. A hologram of a human appeared inside the tank, tall, brown-haired, wearing old armor. He looked almost alive. Her throat tightened. "It's true," she whispered. But before she could move closer, a voice came from the doorway. "Lyra." She turned. It was Professor Xylan. He stood alone, his expression torn between duty and awe. "Professor," she said, breathless. "You knew." He shook his head slowly. "I suspected. But seeing it," he glanced at the hologram. "They told us humans were monsters." "They weren't," Lyra said softly. "They were us." For a moment, neither spoke. The faint hum of the holograms filled the silence. Then Xylan's communicator crackled. "Professor, has the human been captured?" He hesitated. His eyes flicked to Lyra. She looked terrified but unbroken. He pressed the button and said quietly, "Negative." Still searching. Then he turned it off. Lyra stared at him in disbelief. "You're helping me?" He looked at her pendant, still glowing faintly. "If what you are is true, then our history is a lie. Go, before they arrive." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." "Go," he urged. "Follow the north exit tunnel. It leads to the launch bay." She nodded, clutching the cube and her pendant. As she ran toward the exit, Xylan turned back to the hologram of the human warrior. He whispered, almost to himself, "If your kind truly lived, forgive us." Outside, Lyra sprinted through the shadows, alarms still blazing above. The stars glimmered beyond the Academy dome. Somewhere out there, she thought, someone had heard her signal, and far beyond the sky, in the blackness of deep space, something ancient began to stir. A massive ship covered in dust, its engines humming to life after centuries of silence. "Signal received," a voice said inside the ship. "Coordinates locked. Origin Earth." The sky over Viwaran Prime was turning red as the suns began to set. The entire city was under lockdown. Drones filled the skies, scanning every corner. Across giant screens, the Council's message flashed again and again. "Alert! Containment breach at VYRN Academy. Subject classified. Human. Report all sightings immediately." But deep beneath the Academy, inside the maintenance tunnels, Lyra was still running. Her legs burned. Her lungs screamed. But she couldn't stop. Every shadow felt alive. Every echo of footsteps made her flinch. She gripped the glowing pendant around her neck, her only comfort. The small cube in her bag pulsed like a heartbeat, sending out quiet blue waves of light. She whispered to herself, Don't stop, Lyra. Just keep going. In another part of the academy, Professor Xylan stood before the council's holograms. The elders' faces loomed over him, sharp and merciless. You had the human, one hissed. And you let her escape. Xylan clenched his fists. She's just a student, not a weapon. She's a threat, another elder snapped. Do you understand what that word means? Human. The same species that once burned half the galaxy in their wars. Xylan's jaw tightened. You mean the species that built the foundation of this very academy? Their ruins are under our feet, aren't they? The elders fell silent for a moment. Then the central one spoke coldly. Find her, or we will erase you both. The connection cut off. The holograms vanished. Xylan stood there, chest heaving, shame and guilt twisting in his mind. He had spent his life teaching lies, and now one frightened girl had shown him the truth. He looked at the hologram still flickering in front of him, the human warrior from the archives. You were never the monsters, he whispered. We were. Lyra found a small maintenance chamber and slipped inside, locking the door behind her. She leaned against the wall, panting. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the metal surface. Dirt on her face, hair tangled, eyes glowing faintly silver. She slid down and sat on the floor. The cube vibrated again. She placed it on her lap and it projected a small hologram. Static at first, then slowly forming an image. It was a woman, human, wearing a worn uniform. Her voice was soft but steady. To anyone who sees this message, my name is Commander Elara Holt of Earth. If you're watching, then humanity survived somewhere, somehow. Don't let them erase who we were. Don't let them turn our name into fear. Lyra's lips trembled. Commander Elara, we weren't perfect, the hologram continued. We made mistakes, yes, but we also built hope. We protected the weak. We reached the stars not to conquer, but to connect. Remember that. Then the hologram flickered out. Lyra sat there, tears in her eyes. For the first time, she didn't feel lost. She felt proud. The sound of the door unlocking broke her moment of peace. Lyra jumped up, clutching the cube. The door slid open, and there stood Professor Xylan. Professor! Quiet, he said quickly, stepping inside and locking the door again. His face looked tired, older than before. Lyra backed away, holding the cube close. Are you here to take me in? He shook his head. No, I'm here to tell you the truth. Lyra hesitated. The truth? He looked around, making sure they were alone. Then quietly he said, the council lied to everyone, including me. The humans didn't destroy themselves. They were destroyed. Lyra's breath caught. By who? Xylan's eyes darkened. By us. The words hit like thunder. He continued, voice trembling. Thousands of years ago, the Zenari Alliance, our ancestors, feared humanity. They feared their strength, their will. So they united the other races to wipe them out. They called it the Cleansing War. They erased every record and rewrote history. Lyra's hands shook. So all those lessons, all those stories, were propaganda, he said bitterly. And I've been teaching them for decades. She stared at him in disbelief. Then why tell me now? He looked at her, eyes full of regret. Because when I saw that scanner react to your blood, I realized what we destroyed wasn't monsters. It was the only beings who ever understood what courage really meant. Silence filled the room. Lyra looked down at her pendant, then up at him. You can help me. We can show the galaxy the truth. He shook his head slowly. The council will never allow it. They'll burn entire worlds to stop this from spreading. Then I have to leave, Lyra said firmly. The signal I sent, someone out there received it. I felt it. Xylan sighed. Even if that's true, the orbital gates are locked. Every exit is sealed. You can't run forever. Lyra smiled faintly. Maybe not, but I can still make them remember the name Earth. He stared at her, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. You really are one of them. Footsteps echoed from the tunnel outside. Xylan turned sharply. They found us. Lyra grabbed the cube and slung her bag over her shoulder. Then we go together. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. There's an old maintenance lift that leads to the outer docks. If we reach it before the patrols, we might make it. As they slipped into the corridor, Lyra looked back once. At the dark halls of the academy, the place that had once been her home. Now it was just a cage of lies. She whispered under her breath, "For Earth." And as she ran beside the professor, far above them in orbit, a massive, ancient human ship finally opened its eyes. Engines glowing blue for the first time in centuries. Signal confirmed. Its onboard AI said, "Human survivor located. Mission, retrieval." The old maintenance tunnels trembled beneath the academy. The hum of power generators mixed with the echo of alarms still ringing above. Lyra and Professor Xylan ran side by side through the dim corridors, their breaths heavy, the air thick with dust. "Keep going," Xylan said, glancing behind them. "The scanners can't track us down here, not yet." Lyra's pendant glowed brighter with every step, pulsing like a living thing. The cube in her bag vibrated softly, releasing faint beams of blue light that danced across the walls. "Professor," she whispered between breaths. "The cube! It's reacting again." Xylan slowed for a second to look at it. "It's responding to something. Maybe to your signal." She frowned. "You mean, someone answered?" He nodded slightly. "Or something ancient just woke up." Above the tunnels, the council chamber burned with chaos. Dozens of elders surrounded a central holographic sphere that showed a strange signal spreading across the star map. "It's not a virus," said one technician. "It's an awakening code, old human technology." "Impossible," a counselor barked. "Those systems were destroyed millennia ago." The technician pointed at the glowing star cluster. "Not all of them. Something out there is listening." The signal came from the academy. The eldest counselor slammed a clawed hand on the table. "Then destroy the source. Wipe out the girl and anyone protecting her." Lyra and Xylan reached a large circular chamber deep under the academy. The walls shimmered with old runes, symbols that didn't match any Zenari language. At the center stood a tall black pillar covered in dust, humming faintly as if breathing. Lyra stopped in awe. "What is this place?" Xylan stared at it like he had seen a ghost. I think it's older than the academy itself. It's human." He brushed his hand across the pillar. Tiny lights flickered to life, forming patterns that looked like stars. Lyra stepped closer. The cube in her bag glowed, floating out on its own as if pulled by invisible hands. It attached itself to the pillar with a soft click. A low vibration filled the chamber. The floor rumbled. The runes on the walls began to shine in a golden light. Xylan whispered, "It's responding to your presence." Lyra looked up, her eyes reflecting the light. "It's not just responding. It's remembering." The pillar's surface shifted and opened, revealing a hollow core with swirling blue mist. A voice emerged from within, calm, human, and ancient. Voice recognition. Female genetic match. Homo sapiens. Status. Survivor. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. "It knows me. Accessing historical archives," the voice continued. "Unsealing truth records. The fall of Earth." Holographic light filled the room. Images projected around them. Cities burning, human ships fighting against alien fleets, planets exploding under warfire. Lyra gasped, tears filling her eyes. Xylan covered his mouth, horrified. "We did this." The voice continued, echoing through the chamber. "Humanity did not begin the war. Humanity ended it to save the galaxy from extinction. Earth sacrificed itself, releasing the cleansing wave that stopped the plague of war." The last image showed a dying Earth, wrapped in light, its oceans glowing before fading into silence. Lyra fell to her knees. They saved everyone, and the galaxy called them monsters. Xylan knelt beside her. His voice shook. "The Council lied to us all." The pillar's voice softened. "Preservation protocol initiated. Humanity's seed project active. Awaiting return of descendants." Lyra's pendant flashed brighter, syncing with the pillar. Her mark, the spiral scar on her wrist, glowed with the same golden light. Xylan whispered, "Lyra, you are their seed. You're the proof." She touched the pillar, and a beam of light shot upward, piercing through the ceiling and into the sky. Above the city, the light burst through the clouds, a golden beam stretching into space. Every screen, every device, every broadcast across the planet flickered and displayed one message. The truth has been unsealed. People stopped in the streets. Students froze in classrooms. Soldiers stared in silence. The name Earth glowed on every surface, along with images of humans smiling and building, protecting, loving. In orbit, the council ships picked up the signal. "Source located," a commander shouted. But before they could react, a massive object appeared in the distance, dark and ancient, larger than any known ship. Its hull carried the faded symbol of a blue spiral, the same mark on Lyra's wrist. The scanners screamed. Unknown vessel detected, human design. The ship's engines roared to life. "Transmission received," said a voice from the ship. "Coordinates locked. Humanity returns." Back underground, the light around Lyra faded. The pillar powered down, leaving only soft echoes. Xylan looked at her, still stunned. "You've just told the entire galaxy the truth." Lyra wiped her tears, standing tall. "They needed to hear it. But now they'll come for you," he warned. She smiled faintly. "Then they'll finally meet a real Deathworlder." For the first time, Xylan smiled too, not with pride, but with respect. "Your ancestors would be proud." "Not ancestors," she said softly. "Family." Above them, the beam of light still reached into the stars, and far beyond, the ancient human ship adjusted its course, heading straight for Vyran Prime. The era of silence was over. Humanity's name was no longer forgotten. The night sky over Vyran Prime burned with color. The golden beam that shot from the Academy had reached into orbit, a beacon seen by every world in the system. People came out of their homes, eyes wide, watching as the heavens shimmered with light. Across the galaxy, old machines awoke. Silent satellites that hadn't moved in 1,000 years turned their heads toward the signal. Rusted antennas crackled with static before a voice, calm and human, echoed across the void. Signal confirmed. Humanity returns. The words spread like wildfire. Worlds that had mocked the myth of Earth were now trembling. Deep below, Lyra and Professor Xylan stood before the ancient pillar. The air around them buzzed with power, warm and alive. Lyra's pendant pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Xylan whispered, "They're coming." Lyra nodded slowly. "I can feel them." Her mark glowed brighter, and a faint hum vibrated through the ground, the sound of engines breaking the silence of centuries. Above, through the red clouds, something massive moved, a shape that blotted out the stars. It descended slowly, cutting through the atmosphere like a shadow from legend. Every defense system on Vyran Prime activated. Anti-air cannons locked on, and sirens blared across the capital. The Council's fleet rose into the sky, hundreds of sleek alien warships glowing blue. The humans had returned, and the galaxy didn't know whether to fear or hope. Inside the Council chamber, the elders stood before their screens, eyes wide. The massive human ship hovered in orbit, silent but alive. "What do we do?" one whispered. "Attack before it lands," another snapped. "They must not set foot here again." But as they prepared the order, the ship's outer hull opened, revealing rows of smaller vessels, gliding like silver birds. A deep voice came through every channel in the system, steady and kind, but with a power that made even the strongest tremble. "This is Captain Elias Holt of the Ark vessel Aurora. We come not to conquer, but to answer the call of our own." The council went pale. "They speak our tongue," one elder cried. "They're using the old universal code," shouted another. Lyra and Xylan emerged from the underground ruins into the open air. The night sky glowed silver blue as the enormous human ship hung above the Academy like a second moon. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "It's real," she whispered. "They really came." Xylan stared upward, speechless. How could they have survived? Lyra touched her pendant. They never stopped believing someone would remember them. The wind roared as one of the smaller ships broke away from the fleet and descended toward the Academy courtyard. The ground shook as it landed gently, its metal wings folding in like a creature from myth. The hatch opened, a ramp lowered, and out stepped a man, tall, strong, his face lined with years but filled with calm. His uniform bore the same spiral insignia as Lyra's mark. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Lyra stepped forward, tears streaking her cheeks. "You heard me," she whispered. The man smiled softly. "We've been listening for 1,000 years. He reached out his hand. "I am Captain Elias Holt, and you, child, are living proof that humanity never truly died." Lyra's voice broke. "I thought I was alone." "You were never alone," he said gently. "You carried all of us in your blood." The council's warships approached, weapons glowing, engines roaring. The captain turned to the sky. "Hold your fire," Xylan shouted through his communicator. "You're making a mistake." But the council didn't listen. "Destroy them," came the command. Missiles streaked toward the human ship. The sky lit up with explosions. But the Aurora's shields flared, absorbing every strike. Then, without returning fire, the ship released a single pulse of light. Not a weapon, but a transmission. Instantly, every screen, every network, every mind-connected terminal in the system showed the same image, the truth revealed by the archives. Humans sacrificing their world to save the galaxy. Millions across the stars watched in silence as the final message of Earth echoed everywhere. "We died so that others may live. We never asked for worship, only remembrance." The attack stopped. The council ships fell still. Even their pilots couldn't move, their hearts frozen with shame. Lyra stood beside Captain Holt as the wind swept through the courtyard. The stars reflected in her eyes like tiny oceans. Xylan stepped forward slowly. You could destroy us," he said to the captain. Holt shook his head. "We didn't come to destroy. We came to remind." He looked at Lyra. This girl risked everything to speak one forbidden word, Earth. That word woke the stars. Lyra looked down, tears falling freely. "I didn't wake them. They were waiting." The captain smiled. "Then let's finish what they started." He turned toward the sky and lifted his wrist device. "Begin descent of the Eden fleet. It's time to rebuild." Far above, dozens of human ships emerged from hyperspace. Massive vessels shaped like wings, glowing gold and white. They began landing across the surface of VYRN Prime, not as conquerors, but as builders. The people of the galaxy watched in awe as humans stepped out. Flesh and blood, not myths, extending hands instead of weapons. Xylan looked at Lyra one last time. "You've changed everything." Lyra smiled softly. "No, Earth did." She looked up at the bright beam that still pierced the heavens. It was fading slowly now, its work complete. The captain placed a hand on her shoulder. "Welcome home, Deathworlder." Lyra wiped her tears and whispered, "Home. Sounds beautiful." And as dawn broke over VYRN Prime, the suns rose on a new age. One where humans walked among the stars once more. Not as myths, not as monsters, but as hope reborn. The Deathworlders had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again.